We are all very excited to be here. This is a groundbreaking moment for all of us to be able to talk to so many people all at one time about our studio and what we do, what we love to do. Yes, so today I'm going to be introducing you to some members of our team. Courtney Adams, who's a senior interior designer, Sylvia Maffei, who is a senior associate, Steve Solio, who's a senior architect, and of course, Michael Gabellini, who Beth has mentioned is our founding partner. Our studio is based in New York City. We are what we like to refer to as a multidisciplinary international atelier design of luxury, simplicity, and functional and aesthetic value worldwide. We've had a rich history of collaboration within the studio over the 27 years we've been in business, working with such luminaries in design and fashion as Alvaro Siza, Giorgio Armani, Jill Sander, Ian Schrager, Richard Rogers, Todd Orlando, and others. Collaborations are definitely the lifeblood of our studio and bring an energy and synergy to us. We've designed for projects in over 27 different countries for many of the luminaries and celebrity brands that you see here, and the list is only growing. Within design itself, we have several specialties that balance out our portfolio of projects. This includes retail, hospitality, public works, restaurants, residential design, condominium design, exhibition design, and most recently, product design. In our work with private residences, we're frequently engaged to bring new life into existing spaces, such as this townhouse on the Upper East Side, where we were commissioned to bring the historic facade back into its original detailing and create this soaring space for the young couple that was starting to live their family life here. Most interestingly, excavating 2 stories below ground to install this basketball court and complete spa for the family. Our work with private residential has also brought us into work with condominium developments. Very similar in scope in that we're designing for the interiors for people with their homes, such as this residence on Elizabeth Street with Todd Orlando, where we were partnered with Tado. Tado's team designed the exteriors. We were responsible for the interiors, starting with this beautiful lobby and moving through to the unit interiors themselves, which were done with sculptural simplicity and natural materials. Our work with condominiums has also brought us within New York to a project with world-renowned Bjarke Ingels, the 11th, as it is called, 2 soaring twisting towers into the Chelsea skyline. We were brought on this particular project also for interiors, designing one of the towers completely from the amenities and lobby spaces, which I'm showing you now, including this amazing gymnasium and internal pool, to the units themselves, which capitalize on the soaring and expansive views of Chelsea and beyond, all using our signature palette of materials and innovative detailing. Our hospitality work takes cues as well from both private residential and condominium developments, creating warm, enticing environments like this particular hotel on Times Square called The Row, where we were commissioned to do the public spaces and lobby interiors, including site-specific art installations, as well as the bar and lounge. And on the other side of Times Square, also in New York City, we had the Knickerbocker Hotel on a completely different level, a historical landmark building. It was once a hotel, turned into commercial space, and we were brought on to bring it back into its former glory as a hotel, unifying the spaces with contemporary interiors, new venues, and including suites named after some of the most famous residents in the hotel over the years, and crowned with the St. Cloud Rooftop and Bar, a well-known space on the roof of the building where we were able to claim unused space and turn it into this feature area, which you could rent this little space here for $10,000 for the New Year's Eve celebrations over Times Square. Retail design has been a foundation of the studio itself and has been an area that has recently come back into the studio, which we're very excited about as brands are redeveloping their looks and thinking about what it means to be a retail brand in today's modern age. Our work has included Erdos 1436, which I just showed you in China, VERA WANG, who's been a partner of ours for quite some time, and David YURMAN, as Beth mentioned, where we created both a townhouse and a newly designed space off Fifth Avenue in New York, showcasing their American-made collections in mid-century modern aesthetics. Now we're going to turn ourselves away from the portfolio into the actual lifeblood of the studio, which is the staff itself. I'm going to introduce you to the staff members that we have on board so that they can tell us a little bit about what it means to be working with Gabellini Sheppard as we are today. So first, I'd like to introduce you to Courtney Adams. Courtney, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role in the studio?
Yeah, so hi everyone. My name is Courtney Adams. I am a senior interior designer at Gabellini Sheppard. And sort of my area of expertise within the firm is to work on private residential, condominium development, and hospitality. And I have been with Gabellini Sheppard now for about 8 years. And originally I'm from England, and I received my bachelor's from Kingston University in interior design.
And within the studio itself, I referred to you as one of our senior interior designers. Tell us a little bit about some of your favorite projects.
For me, some of my favorite projects that spring to mind are sort of the Upper East Side residence that you had seen in the introduction. We have another private residential, which was along the High Line in New York, 152 Elizabeth Street, which was the condominium build. And then for hospitality, I'd say Knickerbocker Hotel and Four Seasons Anguilla.
And within that list that you just shared with us, there's quite a range of flexibility between private residential, hospitality, condominium design, which means that in our studio environment, we tend to be very collaborative and flexible. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means for you and maybe what that means for you in perspective of where you started with your education?
So one thing is, you know, because we have such a wide range of projects that we take on in the office, and, you know, we have such a wide skill set within the office, it's nice when we get to kind of collaborate with each other across different fields. You know, it's a big learning experience that, you know, perhaps when I was in school, I didn't fully comprehend all the different things that I would be learning and experiencing. In my personal role, I've been an interior designer, but I've also been, you know, involved in product design, photography assistant, styling, renderings. You know, it's been much, much broader than I think had initially thought out. And it's been great. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, the interesting career path that an interior designer takes is never, I think, what one starts with in school, and what you learn on the job tends to bring in a new world of possibilities, especially in the world that we're in today. Mm-hmm. I know private residential is a huge focus of yours and one of your favorite parts of the studio itself. Can you tell me a little bit about why?
So for me, the reason why private residential sort of is one of my favorite is because I really enjoy the one-on-one relationship that you build with a client when you work on their private home. It does have a different feel than when you're working on a larger scale condominium project, because it is small scale. You're creating an environment for somebody and their family, and you really get to sort of develop a relationship and collaborate in a way, because you both have the same goal, which is to create a beautiful, warm, inviting space for them, and hopefully for a long time to come.
There's an intimacy there, right? There's a one-on-one intimacy. You get to watch something develop for someone who is developing themselves. It's a beautiful moment. How might that be a little bit different from the work that you do when you're designing for condominium developments and hotels?
So for condominiums, you know, you're obviously still creating a residential environment for people, but it's one that they don't know that they want yet. So, you know, you're kind of working with a developer, that's your main client. And, you know, you kind of put focus into specific areas. So kitchen design, bathroom design, which are really important modules within sort of your home, but then it expands into you know, all the amenities spaces. So that could be spas, pools, play areas, offices, whatever they want to market. So then you get involved in the marketing aspect of that, which is much broader. And that's when it sort of grows from sort of being a private residential into the marketing. And you can really then take your renderings and make that appear to be the lived in environment that people want to buy into. So, you know, to me, there are elements that are the same, but it's just on a completely different scale.
Yeah, and scale is very important, especially when we're talking about hospitality, because I know you help us out significantly with specifying. Can you tell the team a little bit about that role?
Yeah, so specifying is something that when I joined Gabellini Sheppard, I really got involved in. I started on the Knickerbocker Hotel, which you had seen, and that was a large specification project. So when you specify for hotel, you know, you're doing multiples of the same thing, maybe with slight variations. So it's really a puzzle that you are trying to figure out, which can be really rewarding because it might be spread over 350 variations of the same space, a guest suite. So learning specifications and how things are made and how things are fabricated and where, and the suitability, you know, is the amount of information that I have learned in that process is, it's, you know, I know how fabrics are made and carpets and everything. It's great. It was a wonderful learning experience.
It's a well-rounded one too. Thank you, Courtney, for telling us a little bit about that.
Oh, thank you.
Next, we're going to talk with Sylvia Maffei, who is a senior associate of ours who specializes in retail, amongst other things, within the studio. Sylvia, would you introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. My name is Sylvia Maffei. I'm a senior associate at Gabellini. I've been with the firm for the last 10 years, so I think I can kind of call myself like a veteran at this point. So during this decade, I've been working on a variety of projects from private residential, condo, retail, and lately product design. As you probably can tell, I am not from US, I'm Italian. I studied in Florence architecture and in Madrid. I became a licensed architect in Italy in 2006 and worked in Italy and Spain for a while I was also taking my PhD in architecture engineering. I decided to move in US in 2008. Just a couple of months before the crisis. So it was perfect timing to try to find a job in architecture, as you can tell. But that was kind of the initial struggle led me to unexpected way to grow my interest in design field. I co-founded my eyewear designer company and also collaborated with fashion designer on some collection. And that really buzzed my interest for fashion and retail. When I moved to US, I studied a part of my master in interior design, and there during school is when I met Michael Gabellini and Kim Sheppard, and I started to work for the firm. And since the beginning, I had the opportunity to work on the development of several retail projects with major fashion brands, such as La Perla, Brioni, J. Brand, 1436, David YURMAN, NBC Studios. So I would say the retail design became my main area of expertise, and it's something that I'm really enjoying because it's, as you can tell from my background and kind of my fashion exploration is something that I really care about. And I'm really interested in the design, but also in the branding aspect of it.
That's amazing. When you're passionate about design, it's going to come out in any direction, right? And I love your history with eyewear, products, and now as well. So tell us about one of your favorite projects within the studio. You've been working on so many.
Yeah, I mean, every project is really like, it's almost like a child, you cannot really choose, but I would say that 1436 project for me was one of my favorite because it's the first project, I think, of the firm that when we had to travel to China and also to Mongolia to really get to, understand the manufacturing process that was behind one of the purest cashmere product in the world. So 4036, for who doesn't know the brand, but basically the two numbers define the thinnest and longest fiber of cashmere in the world. So it's quite an amazing brand, quite an amazing product. So the possibility to travel, to really understand the manufacturing process really was at the base of the creation of the concept that we developed for them. So the goal was really create a store. There was a storytelling device for the client to understand what it goes behind that product. So basically all the design element comes with this idea of the transformation of the fiber from a linear element to a woven piece. And we kind of created this space collaborating with an amazing team of people, very proud of the product that they create, and try to translate this idea of cashmere, soft as a silk, white as snow, and light as a cloud. These were our mantra throughout the process. And we kind of recreate the space in each element. We kind of to infuse this idea. So we have a very amazing facade with overlapping LED panel that create this amazing abstract landscape that we call the Mongolian grassland. We have a floating ceiling with, I think you saw some of the images in the presentation, with undulating plaster panel that create this kind of cloud-like ethereal ceiling suspended in the space. And then we have this special fixture wall that we created for them that really tells about the story behind the fiber. It's like 16,000 acrylic rod. They are backed by LED. And this creates this very beautiful abstract transformation of natural cashmere into this special spectacle wall. So this is just to say how, you know, all these elements were really created with them to represent their brand and their product.
Yeah, that's beautifully put. Your visual words tell the story. If anyone wants to see these images again, please visit GabelliniSheppard.com. You can see this. You can see all of our work. We like to think that the website is set up like an encyclopedia, so anyone can research us thoroughly. But thank you very much for sharing that, Sylvia. I appreciate it. Next, we're going to move to Steve Solio, who is one of our more recent additions to the team. He's a senior architect for us. And Steve, can you tell us a little bit about what you've been working on?
Sure, thank you, Joel. So my name is Steve Solio. I'm a senior architect and a project manager here at Gabellini Sheppard. My area of expertise within the studio is historic preservation and adaptive reuse. And before I get started, I just want to remind the students, if they have any questions, please pop them into the Q&A. So I'm a licensed architect registered in New York City. I'm also a LEED accredited professional, which is for energy and environmental concerns with the building industry. I was born and raised in the suburbs of New York City, and I grew up in a suburban town inspired by the beautiful residential mansions basically in the surrounding villages around my town. And that was my first inclination towards the love of architecture. And growing up, I continued to take journeys into the city, as we call it, and slowly indoctrinated myself into the love of urbanism and how that contrasted with the urbanism and the suburban of my youth. And I knew I wanted to be an architect early on. I started studying architecture in high school. And I went to the university at Buffalo. I studied architecture, urbanism, and it was there that I really started to thrive. And I loved my studio classes. I became inspired at the time. It was very popular, called the deconstructivist movement. Architects such as Peter Eisenman, Frank Gehry, Daniel Libeskind. And through this inspiration, I started to weave sculpture and paintings into my own student work. And it was really just an extraordinary time for myself. I really came alive. I was emulating firms like Morphosis, Co-op Himmelblau, and the visionary Liebes Woods. And these were all these avant-garde inspirations for me. And I really, at that point, started to approach architecture as an art form for myself. And when I graduated in 1995, I decided I needed some practical skills. So I enrolled at the Fashion Institute of Technology and learned AutoCAD. And soon after that, I had gotten my first real job in the city, and I haven't looked back since then. And that was 25 years ago. So it's been a pretty intense career path so far. And I'm very happy actually to be celebrating my 25th year with Gabellini Sheppard, almost, to the day. Over the course of my career, I've worked in a variety of firms, small, medium, large, corporate, and what have you. But really, I've tried to focus on design-focused boutique firms. And so it's been a circuitous career path for me, taking a lot of different twists and turns. And that's by design, because I was always following my own idiosyncratic path towards what design, can be and what it could be for me and what I could offer in my collaborations. So I would just say that the growth and the fit with Gabellini Sheppard, based on the the project typologies that I've done over the years, that's like the historic preservation, the adaptive reuse, hospitality, restaurants, workplaces, and the single family high-end residential. It was all like quite a good fit. And then most importantly was the vision and the design values really kind of dovetail perfectly.
My final question would be for you. Tell us a little bit about the work with the Landmark Preservation Commission.
So for those of you who may not know, in New York City, we have law. We have a landmark preservation law. And that was essentially, and unfortunately, there was a major architectural catastrophe in New York City, a revered building, the Pennsylvania Station, this great Beaux-Arts masterpiece by the esteemed firm of McKim, Mead and White. They had built this building in 1910, and in the 1960s, it was demolished. And then after that, folks woke up and said, we've got to protect our treasure so this doesn't happen again. So now what we have is Landmarks Preservation Commitment. It's written into law. Whenever you want to do work on a landmark, be it in a district or an individual landmark, you go through a process. And before you go through that process, we go through a community board. And so that's written into law as well, so that the general public can contribute and be aware of what architects and developers might be doing to tinker with their city. And so it's a rigorous process, and it's really all hands on deck. There's a give and take between the impulse to preserve history, but also the realities that cities evolve by their very nature. And we're happy to be a part of that continuum.
I can't think of a better time right now that we need to look at the idea of preserving, enhancing, and burnishing something within New York. It's really going to be something special when we come out of this pandemic and look at what we have to really celebrate there. Thanks, Steve.
Steve, this first question is for you. How did you begin your work with historic preservation, and what are some of the challenges that you encountered with this, specifically with sustainability?
So what I can say is that when an architect or designer works in an urban environment, such as New York, right off the bat, you're in a historic context. So even if you're going to build a modern building, you're in the context of something historic, and you have to reconcile that one way or another. So that's just right there. Secondly, there's just so much stock buildings in New York. So whether it's a gut renovation of a large building, or just an apartment or a retail space within one component of an existing building, right there, again, you have to deal and you have to reconcile with that history one way or another.
Great. What is Gabellini Sheppard's approach to sustainability?
One thing I can offer here is that, and also to parlay that the sustainability with historic preservation, is that it is a challenge. And in New York City, when your building is landmarked, you are exempt from the energy code. However, as a professional, you still want to do the best due diligence that you can. So even though you're exempt on a legal, and you do the best you can, whether it's through the assembly of the wall construction, the glazing assembly and specifications, and so on and so forth. But what I can say is that regardless of, say, a LEED certification or anything related to that, what you can do is build well and build for the long term. And that intrinsically right there is sustainable because it's got longevity and lifespan to it.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Sylvia, a question for you. What are some of the challenges of moving to a new country for work? Would you recommend finding a job there in advance or looking after the move?
It's a tough question because things are changing so much, especially in US. We Now the visa situation is complicated, but I think in general, my experience, I work in 3 countries, in Italy, in Spain, in US. Every time has been a different experience. Sometimes I either research earlier before I travel. Sometimes it was a very instinctive position. I have to go and figure out myself. So I would say, depending where you're coming from, I would recommend to understand very well how it works, the visa situation. I'm saying that I don't want to put in this kind of conversation, but it's important to not lose time and really see what your possibilities are. There are countries that are more flexible in terms of having people from abroad to come and work. And that I think I would start with those countries, because I think it just take less effort from try to figure out the legal aspect, but give you more opportunity to really work in another environment, another country, learn other languages. And once you start to get into that kind of understanding and willingness to start over in another country and really get into this very mobile new world, I think then it's easier. It gets easier once you just jump to another country, as I did. The first is the toughest one, and then you will never stop, possibly.
Right. Thank you. Courtney, a question for you. In academics, students focus heavily on concepts for their projects. How important is a conceptual approach in developing real-life projects for Gabellini Sheppard?
We do focus very heavily on sort of like a collaborative process for conceptual development at the beginning of projects. So, you know, we often begin similar to how Michael spoke on, you know, words, visuals, imagery, and then we tie that in with sort of the client, sort of the program that we've been provided, and we start sketching and drawing and, you know, laying out and mapping out the design plan and sort of how we can make that all come into a reality. So conceptually, we do start quite heavy, and then we just develop it into sort of something that we can apply into the process, and how can we make that work.
Great. Material choices seem to be a central focus to the work for the firm. What does the company do to research new developments in material to stay up to date?
I can answer that one. So we often sort of meet and research with different vendors and fabricators. We have showroom visits with them. We go to stone yards. We have them come to the office, and we're always looking for new and innovative products that are out in the market and things that are very special and one of a kind. And we do like to work with materials that sort of are boutique, you don't see everywhere. They're very crafted, specialty, because we find that they are sort of like the little bits of jewelry that we can add to projects, and they really set sort of palettes aside from one another.
Absolutely, and I think that totally shows in the incredible work that the firm is doing. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for today, but I do want to ask Michael one final question for you. Any last words of wisdom or advice that you have for the students tuning in today?
I would say you need to be optimistic, empathetic, and think about action. We have what we need to do those 3 things.
Great, I think that's great advice. Michael, thank you so much for your time today. The whole team, we really appreciate this incredibly insightful presentation. Students, thank you so much for joining us. If you want to learn more about Gabellini Sheppard, you can visit their website, gabellinisheppard.com, or Instagram @Gabellini Sheppard. If you want to learn more about The Original Americas, you can visit our website, theoriginalamerica's.com, or our Instagram channel @BeOriginalUSA. Thank you guys so much, and we will see you on the next one.